Ain't war hell?
Hello, everyone. It's 2Fast2Movie. I'm your host, Matt Kime, with my co-host, Jose Quintana. But before we get any further, remember to give us a like, comment, subscribe. You know what to do. You know the drill by now. You've been on YouTube for long enough. And today we are going to be talking about episode 103 of The Bad Batch, Replacements. What are your thoughts so far?
I like this episode. It definitely had a lot darker and a bit of a thriller vibe, in my opinion. Like, just I don't even know how to word it, but it's very dark.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of the things I've always loved about Filoni's take on this universe whenever he's allowed to like really go for it is he gets really dark. But this episode kind of felt like two different episodes smashed into one, if you ask me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We see two plot lines, which I think is a first for this series so far.
So far, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of good because we get to see Crosshairs again. So
Yeah. So we pick up right after the Bad Batch has escaped Seleucami. Unfortunately, their ship was severely damaged in the process, which drags them out of hyperspace, and they crash land on a deserted moon in the middle of nowhere. While there, a native creature, an Ordo Moondragon, starts sabotaging their ship as it is going for their fuel cell, which it feeds on. Tech and Echo are forced to stay behind to repair the ship, while Wrecker is incapacitated with a series of amusing but slightly concerning head injuries, and so he is also forced to remain behind. That leaves Hunter and Omega to go after the creature to get the fuel cell back to get off the ship. They encounter the creature, but a brief fight leaves Hunter incapacitated, which leaves the young Omega to fend for herself. She goes into the tunnels of the moon after going after the creature with nothing but a flashlight and Hunter's gun, but is able to retrieve the power cell without firing a single shot by trading her flashlight for the battery. She and Hunter make their way back to the ship, where it has been revealed that Wrecker has been setting up a room for Omega to make her feel like more part of the family. The crew takes off the moon and flies away. Meanwhile, we see Crosshair again for the first time in a couple of weeks. Crosshair has been newly reconditioned yet again by Tarkin, and he is now placed in charge of an elite level of soldiers where it's supposed to be clones training regular conscripted recruits. This unit is put to the test as they are given the same mission that the Bad Batch was in the pilot, where it is to go to Onderon and eliminate Saw Gerrera. The unit makes their way back to the base on Onderon, only to find that Saw Gerrera is not there, only just a group of his fighters who are protecting a group of civilians. The unit engages Saw Gerrera's fighters and takes them out fairly quickly, but hesitates once they realize that their targets are civilians. One of the soldiers refuses to carry out the mission and is summarily executed by Crosshair, who then forces the remaining soldiers to kill the unarmed civilians. And if you look closely, some of them were being burned alive because one of the soldiers had a flamethrower. After the mission, the unit returns back to Camino, where Tarkin is encouraged by the results and decides to start moving ahead with starting to phase out the clone army, which concerns the Kaminoans, who seemingly have their own agenda. So it felt like the B-plot had way more going on in it this week, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So our main characters kind of just got stuck in place for the episode. It kind of just felt like they just needed something to do.
yeah, I think what was it? Tech and Echo had at least like an extra 2 minutes of spotlight when they were checking out the ship for the battery, and then the what was it? The Ordo Moondragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing. They realize something's happening with the ship, and then they go back inside, and then it leaves Hunter and Omega to do the rest, basically.
Well, what I liked about this is that it forced Omega to rely on herself to get them out of that situation. She was able to think her way out of it because she's very clearly not a fighter, at least not yet. There's theories that she's force sensitive in the show. I don't really know if the show's like implied too much about that quite yet, if they have at all. So that might be a case of just some people reading into things that might not be there. But the point is that she has to think her way out of that scenario, and it was kind of nice to see because it was like a little bit of a growing up moment for her, how she had to rely on herself. But at the same time, like you see at the end of the episode, another heartwarming moment where Wrecker creates a room for her, and so she's being more and more integrated into the family.
Yeah, definitely a very touching thing to see. I really liked both moments, especially when just a side note, but like when the dragon is chewing on the flashlight, we see the energy like actually coursing through the body of the dragon. I really like that detail.
Oh, that was cool. Like it was animated really, really well. That's one of the things I love about the show. It seems like the animation's almost on par with the last season of Clone Wars, at least the first like 8 or 9 episodes of that show, final season at least. So the animation's been remarkably consistent, although the color palette is way darker, which I think is fitting.
Yeah, it fits the especially the tone for this episode, but the tone of the series as a whole just a lot darker than the Clone Wars and more grungy, I guess is
A
the
little
word for
bit,
use
yeah.
word. Yeah.
And that's honestly something I really appreciate about the show is that, and I don't know, the Clone Wars got pretty fucking dark at points. Um, that one sequence where the clones are forced to execute each other by their general, the Ponkrell arc, if you remember that one.
I think
It's
I do,
basically
yeah.
space Vietnam mixed with like paths of glory. One of the little details I noticed is that Wrecker has something going on in his head, and now I was reading on the boards before, after seeing the episode, and somebody was like, "That might be where the inhibitor chip is." So, do you think that could cause trouble down the line? Do you see it that way, or do you see it as just like a running gag throughout the episode?
Ooh, I didn't even think about the inhibitor chip.
Yeah,
But
because they're making it. They keep talking about it.
right. They did mention it again. What wait, did yeah, they did mention it again this episode.
Hmm.
Um I want to say it's just part of Wrecker's character, but honestly, you can almost throw anything up in the air for about it.
Yeah, because the thing is that there's no, as of right now, there's no like, I mean, there is a plot, but it's not like a serialized plot line for the Bad Batch. Like, there's no end objective they're trying to complete right now, and so it's still fairly wide open as to what it is they're actually doing or what they want to accomplish, other than just survive. Anything could be a setup for anything at this point, this early on, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think especially in Star Wars, surviving is as a long-term goal is not too off the radar for most people or clones even.
But we also got to see Hunter's talents being put to use because each of the clones are enhanced in some way, and so we finally got to see him using his enhanced senses because you didn't really get to see too much of that up until now.
Yeah, I don't think we saw. I think it was just mostly like regular clone stuff. Well, with like
Except a little bit,
besides.
except he's dressed like Rambo and is a little bit more badass.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, he's the Rambo leader of the group was his like archetypical role, and so until now we haven't really seen his talent. That's just a stray observation from me.
No, I totally agree. Not just with the Rambo comment, but like uh, as the main leader of the group and such. Yeah, something I
Um,
wanted to bring up real quick. Matt already knows about this, but the fact that Omega is um still very young, like she's just a kid. Like in the previous episode, we see how fascinated she is just by the ground, like feeling it for the first time, and this one puts her to a very big stress test. Fending her, of having herself fend off a moon dragon, which she did very well and did it in such a different way that I think any clone or anybody in the Star Wars universe could have done.
That's one of the That's one of like the running tensions of the show that I'm enjoying so far is that she's still a very much a naive child despite being from the same world that everybody else is from. Like she's never left Camino before. She's like everybody else just sees her and the rest of the clones as just lab experiments. And so she sees dirt for the first time is just stunned by it, open skies, strange animals, and so she has like a very different outlook on it that kind of sometimes comes into I mean she's a child, like part of her arc is just coming of age, it seems, which is why I enjoyed seeing her have to fend for herself even for a little bit, because what the show is telling us now is that she has the ability to fend for herself, and why the whole conflict of the last episode where Hunter realizes that she's just a kid, she should just be allowed to just be a kid, why he was trying to send her off with Cut and his family. And this episode is showing us that she may be a kid, but she's going to have to grow up way faster than she should.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. We know how tough it is to be a kid in the Star Wars universe.
Just ask Anakin.
Uh,
I'll go no for that one.
Only a little bit, but let's continue with Crosshairs because seeing him in this episode, it was a bit of a joy for me just because we got to see some pretty bad badassery and as well as just bad in general, to be honest, with his direction of Tarkin. Was Tarkin's new squad, right? Or was it the other guys?
The other guy is under Tarkin, who is overseeing this project. So it's like Tarkin's the main
Okay.
commander, but I think it's under the direct oversight of the other guy. I don't know. It's bureaucracy.
Gotcha. Okay. But yeah, it's I just want to go straight to that point. The moment he shoots the I guess the second in command, not clone but soldier, and then orders everyone else to just annihilate the civilians. Oh boy.
Holy crap, that was brutal. And okay, I got to be honest. The blonde dude, the dude he shoots, was annoying as hell. So like, cause he keeps antagonizing Crosshair for being a clone basically throughout the episode, and so you could tell Crosshair was just looking for an excuse.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame him at all.
But oh my god, that was. This is the first time in a Disney produced Star Wars show that we've seen something like this, to be honest, because a lot of the more brutal things that came out of the Clone Wars was stuff that was produced when the show was still on Cartoon Network. I think one of my biggest issues with like Star Wars Rebels, as much as I enjoyed that show, was that the show was put onto Disney XD when it first aired, and so the tone of the series was kind of adjusted accordingly. And it's at the end of the day, it's a space fantasy, kind of intended for children, but at the same time, they put in old EU characters that 30-plus-year-olds would recognize, like Thrawn. So you don't put Thrawn in if you're only trying to appeal to kids. All I'm saying. One of mine and a lot of other people's big, like, I guess, complaints against Rebels, for as much as I enjoyed it, was that the Empire always just kind of seemed like dopes. Like, they were always getting outsmarted. They were, like, the stormtroopers' poor aim was even more pronounced in that show. Like, because it's a Disney XD show, nobody can die. And the show did try to push the boundaries of what it was allowed to do, but it never crossed any of those lines for the most part. Not like this. And so I think what I'm getting at is that the format of this being on Disney Plus gives it a little bit more freedom than it otherwise might have had.
I definitely agree with that. Like, I think not even just the fact that Disney is willing to push its limits, because there's still limits, of course, but the fact that it's testing with a Disney Plus show is, I think, is what really makes it more fitting, just because Disney Plus is wide for a variety of ratings, I guess would be
Yeah.
things like we have a bunch of Disney Junior shows and like the classic Disney Channel shows and even newer ones, and then depending on where you even live at, it's they even have I forgot what it's called. I think it's called Star or something like that. But basically, it's like Hulu, which has all the kind of stuff that you wouldn't expect to see in Disney Plus. Like it has Logan even on there.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that the show's doing a good job with so far is showing like why the Empire is something that needs to be fought against, other than the Jedi genocide, where it's oppressive measures like the chain codes or restricting travel, forcing people to hire smugglers and soldiers to transport them out, as what we see here, executing anybody who gets in their way, no matter who they are, what they're affiliated with, including their own men. Because the Empire needs to be something that is damn near insurmountable to fight against. Because if you make them look like dopes the entire time, if you just make them look like goofballs who the characters are outsmarting every 3 seconds, it kind of undermines the entire stakes of the whole conflict. We need to see why and how they got so powerful, and I think the show is doing a good job of reinforcing all of that, especially with the brutality of it. Also, one of my favorite things is that they tried to default on the credit that the Republic owed to the Kaminoans. I
Right.
thought that was a funny detail.
Yeah. But I definitely agree with the whole Empire being a big threat to the galaxy. Like it's I think it's what makes the Empire probably one of the most recognizable and in Star Wars universe feared I was gonna say entity and but not entity but just a gigantic force to be messed with.
And I like that it's Crosshair that is carrying some of these things out because he seemed like he was willing to do it even before the reconditioning of the chip went totally haywire. Now, granted, it's implied that the chip was messing with his head the entire time, um, but having a recognizable and somewhat sympathetic face be the one to carry this stuff out kind of heightens the stakes of the personal story with the Bad Batch a little bit, and I'm enjoying that.
I think it's definitely um a great addition to the show this is what a fourth of the way into the show because 12 episodes I think he
14,
said.
I think.
Yeah, so around a fourth or whatever. But I think it makes a good addition to episode 3 to add that because we not only get to see what Crossers is up to, but we get to see what the Empire is planning and what their current focus is or a current objective they're on. And it just it brings a little bit of a new eye to the Empire in a way.
One other thing I want to talk about is that the Kaminoans are really pissed. They're planning something. I don't know what, but they're planning something.
If I had to take a guess, I would say they would somehow use Crosshairs to flip the switch again and be on their side, something like that. If they have control of the chips, or at least a way to make either the chip counteract each other or something like that, that's what I can imagine happening.
Yeah. I still think they're building up to a battle of Camino, but we'll see. We'll see. It happened in Star
Yeah.
Wars Battlefront too. That's going to be my theory until proven otherwise.
No worries with that.
Did you enjoy this episode overall? Do you have any final thoughts?
Definitely enjoyed it. Overall thoughts is Hunter and Omega are adorable. Crosshairs is a badass, and I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah. I mean, for my part, I thought this was a good episode. It was the first time we've seen this show at least go to the classic A plot, B plot structure, and so it was a little bit off-putting. So I think the pacing could have been handled a little bit better because on one hand you have this incredibly dark mission where people are being executed left and right, and then on the other hand you have this cute father-daughter bonding moment, and so sometimes it didn't always quite mesh. But the moments themselves were fine. It's just one storyline had way more momentum going to it and carrying into next week than the other did. Because I think one of my criticisms is that, and again, it's super early on, so who knows? But I think we need more of a defined objective for what the Bad Batch is planning next. Not necessarily the video game style fetch quest that the Mandalorian became, but like I would like to know what their objective is, I guess, basically is what I'm saying. But overall, I thought it was a good episode, and I am really looking forward to next week. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring that little bell for notifications. You guys know what to do by now. And we recently just finished wrapping up Invincible, My Hero Academia, or whenever that show decides to start doing something again, or something important at least. We also talked about Falcon and the Winter Soldier recently, and we have plenty of other content, both narrative and commentary based on YouTube, including our web series Interview Philly, which recently played at the Philadelphia Independent Film Festival and is being screened at the Independent Shorts Awards as I currently speak. And if you just want to hear me talk about movies, there's Full Stop Reviews, where I talk about movies for 5 minutes. And hey, it's 2Fast2Movie.